with today's mini class. My ears are ringing. So I'm Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium. I'm Italian Arawak, and I own a school called the Ivy League Psychic Academy. It's about 8 years old, and I opened that to start training people in psychic mediumship development. But today it's branched out into everything, Reiki, astrology, tarot. And something that I always spoke to my students about from the very first class at the academy was ears ringing. And back then, people would look at me like I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. These days, people are understanding this a little bit more because it's becoming more widespread. And because in the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen that a lot of doctors, and there's new research out, they can't figure out why tinnitus, ears ringing, is no longer being cured, why they can't seem to, the meds that were working previously are no longer having the same effect, and why there's such a great increase with it. So this is something at the Academy we've always discussed, and I'm really excited to see that it's becoming a bigger problem, quite frankly. So here's what it is, What is ear ringing? Well, here's how I always explained it to my students, and here's how my grandmothers explained it to me. The grandmothers used to say, left for love and right for spite, and that was fairly accurate. When the left ear is ringing, they considered that love. I consider it mediumship. I believe that that's when a deceased spirit is near you. Now, we still have to use our discernment, We don't know if they're from the light. We don't know if they're of darker energy or if they're earthbound, but it is possible that there is a spirit coming in purposefully to deliver a message to you, or to deliver a message through you out to someone else in your vicinity, right? So if you have mediumistic abilities, they don't really take the time to figure whether or not you want to deliver that message. They don't go, does she have a website? Does she have a business card? Is she willing to do this? They just come and they just start talking at you. So your ears will ring, It can also happen involuntarily. So a lot of spirits don't mean to ring your ears, but because they came in a little too close, once they start tapping into we could say your aura, or we could say your energy field, once somebody starts tapping into your energy field, you'll have all kinds of physical reactions, mental, emotional, including, telepathy, all kinds of reactions will come from someone living or deceased entering into your energy field. So sometimes they don't have a message, and that can get frustrating for a lot of people, especially people who are dabbling with mediumship, and they're like, why are they sometimes not saying anything? Because it was accidental, or possibly because they're earthbound, and it's best for you not to communicate, So they're just there, maybe watching, staring, things like this. All right. Now, the left side, the concept of love coming through from the left, the grandmothers would say, your ears must have been ringing, we were talking about you, and they would consider that this is a way of sending affection to other people. So I like that a lot. I like the idea that our deceased loved ones, our ancestors, come in through the ringing of the left ear, and it seems to be incredibly accurate, actually. Now the right ear ringing, we're talking about your psychic ability, your higher mind. I would also say this, your guides that are appointed to you, and if you don't know your guides, check out the Meet Your Guides class. We talk about this there more in depth. But your guides will actually ring your right ear, and then they will step back, and they will allow you to observe what's happening with your thoughts. Now, what happens when your right ear is ringing? The grandmothers would say, left for love, right for spite. I don't know that it's spite exactly, but it can be. It is a warning. That's how I always take it. You could say that it's a warning. You could say that it's an opportunity to protect yourself. You could say that it's an opportunity for you to collect data, to collect all kinds of information from the people that are around you at that time, from the messages that are going on through your technology, any kind of meetings that might be happening, any events that are occurring. Okay, so you want to do an analysis on everything around you when your right ear starts to ring. You also want to do an analysis on anything that's going on internally. So mental, emotional, physical. Pay attention to what's happening in those moments. Collect that information and know that it's useful in some way on a larger scale. So I always like to say, whatever information I collect when my right ear is ringing, I can count on that being useful either within the next few hours or over the course of the next couple weeks. Okay, so apply it and study what's going on at that time. So there we go. Left for love, right for spite. Okay, that's your psychic ability, the right ear. What is it exactly the ear is ringing? It's sometimes almost like a tinnitus. It's like a vibration. It's like a humming. It's an annoying sound that anyone can actually hear. Even people who are completely deaf get it. Even animals that are completely deaf. When a spirit comes in the vicinity, I've had people bring in their deaf pets we do a pet Reiki day at the academy, and they would be like, oh my God, my dog's deaf. But as soon as a spirit would come in, the dog would stare and look and could hear them. The dog was hearing the same identical things, even completely deaf, that we were as mediums. So everybody gets this regardless, but it is the type of thing that can't be treated. So if you went to the doctor, you thought maybe you had hearing loss. A lot of people are looking at this with their elderly parents, and they're bringing them into the doctor, and they're thinking they're having hearing loss. But the reality is that as you get older, your intuitive abilities increase. So it may not be hearing loss. As any of us get older, our intuitive abilities increase. And due to the pandemic, right now, everybody is on an increase. So what we've seen as the awakening is going on in the world over the last few years, as things have leveled up a bit, we've seen people with a few different interesting side effects from that intuitive intelligence increasing. We're going to get to some of the other physical cues here later, but the most common one is this. And this is where we found that new research was coming out and doctors couldn't figure out why the meds were no longer working. Nothing can fix this. Nothing can fix this because it isn't broken. And it's something that we were supposed to use for our own self-development, spiritual development. This is part of our roots. This is part of the language that the universe speaks and spirit speaks, that we are always supposed to be tapped into, tuned into, and using for survival and growth. But when we try to tune it out, it only gets louder and louder and more disruptive. And it will start to turn into some of the other physical cues that we're going to talk about. So we don't want to ignore this one. The second the ears start to ring on a regular basis, especially, you really want to say, okay, that's it. Okay, I'm ready to understand what these messages are, and I'm ready to apply them to my life. If you are paying attention, being mindful, and acknowledging this, you're going to be in a position to get control of it also. I consider it sort of like the readings that I do. People go, oh, what are you getting from me? What are you getting from me? Nothing, because you didn't pay me and we're not sitting here. This isn't booked. I'm not reading you right now, so I'm getting nothing. That's what I tell them, right? But really what I'm doing is I'm tuning it all out. I don't want to look at it. It's not of any use to me. Well, that's how the ear ringing is. A lot of the information that's trying to come through isn't necessarily of tremendous use to you. So there are times when you want to acknowledge it, like when your higher mind is telling you there's a warning, you need to collect data. And there are other times when you want to be able to turn it off and tune it out, like when some earthbound deceased person just happens to be sitting too close to you. Okay, we have to, again, have that discernment for our own health and well-being. So it can get a bit overwhelming, but you have to be willing to learn the language here. Again, we have psychic mediumship training where we break all of these things down, okay? But let's look at this today. Why could it be increasing for you? Well, we talked about the awakening, okay, in the world going on. I think we're, halfway into that? I think we still have like 10 years to go or something. So we should expect more of this. We also have something called Kundalini. You guys can Google that to learn more. I'm not going to get into the whole thing with Kundalini today, but here's what I tell my students and my Reiki students. Kundalini, I think of as sort of a detoxing process. So as you become more woke, as you become more able to heal others and yourself, you have to also detox and remove blocks. Anything that's holding you back has got to go. Okay, so that's part of the Kundalini process. And we would often see it kick in while you're going through one of these changes. Also, empathic people shifting from level 2 into 3. And by the time you hit level 4 empathic ability, your ears are probably ringing off the hook. Okay, so we have Empathic Awareness training. Okay, Empathic Awareness up on the website that can help you with that. Mediums, okay, every medium under the sun gets this. And what we like to try to do is to think of it almost like a receiver, like a telephone, okay? The phone rings and you pick it up and you talk to whatever spirit is there. Objects can also trigger it. So I notice that when Paul and I are hanging out here in this particular part of my living room, because I have a doll and some jewelry and sort of like antiques and collectibles that I've saved from my deceased ancestors, because they're all over here to the right side of me, my ears will ring like crazy when I'm here. So because of certain objects, you can actually tap into the deceased that are connected to them. You can tap into the energy that the object itself has collected. And the same thing would happen in different atmospheres. So for those of you who love to go antiquing or yard selling, but you realize that you've had an increase with your intuitive abilities, your empathic ability, all of a sudden, something like antiquing or going yard selling could become an unfortunate feat, because you're physically reacting with this ear ringing and with these other symptoms we're going to talk about, and it could become very unpleasant. So objects can trigger it. Also, atmospheres can trigger it. So for those of you who maybe like to do historical tours, or for those of you who are attracted to certain buildings, maybe for paranormal reasons, your ears are going to ring like crazy as you approach those. If there is something left in the atmosphere, we would call this residual energy, not necessarily intelligent energy, something that's trying to communicate with you, but residual energy is left over from something that occurred there. And if a place is historical, it's going to have a lot built up regardless. But if anything tragic ever occurred, anything really dynamic ever occurred, by all means, your ears are going to ring. It would be in an atmosphere like that both ears are ringing, okay? So I could feel you guys asking this question right now. Why is it sometimes both of my ears? It could be an atmosphere like that, or you're touching an object like that. It could also be that you're receiving a warning, okay, the right side, while a spirit is actually trying to communicate with you on the left. It would not be unheard of that if you're approaching a mark maybe a situation where you need to be a little more safe and you're not paying any attention, that they would get louder. They would get louder and your psychic ability would get louder. Of course it would. Okay. So it could be both sides, but also those of you who are receiving a download, especially at night when you're sleeping, again, through the crown chakra, causing that manic-like episode for anywhere from a few days to possibly even a couple months, you would also get the ringing in the ears, or even wake up and find that one ear is plugged or both ears are plugged. I tend to think of receiving a download, which is that direction that we mentioned earlier, as also being a warning that you're approaching a deadline within your life contract. So if you have a point in your life contract, meaning the things you signed on to do before you came to Earth, they're all on deadline. If you're about to miss a deadline, your ears are going to go crazy, especially at night. So we want to be mindful. We have another free mini class coming up called, Receiving the Download. Why else could it happen? You're having a deja vu. So if you encounter someone, or it's almost like these different, layers of time, it's almost like time travel. When they finally meet or are crossing paths, you have a deja vu, either from a dream or almost like a memory replaying itself from a previous time. Your ears could ring during that time, or it would be almost like going deaf. Now, some people receive this more as a pressure in the ears. So if you have a pressure where you feel like you're almost going deaf, or it could even be quite painful, like when an airplane goes down, goes up or comes down, it could also feel like that, or like when there's a seashell up to your ear. Okay, it could also be if you're a healer. So some of you, do we have any Reiki practitioners or people who do like energy work or psychic surgery or anything like that? Okay, so for those of you who practice, you would notice that sometimes it happens just on its own and you can't really place why or what triggered it. And that would be that there's someone around you or a situation around you that is sort of calling on your healing abilities to come and meet those needs. Okay, what's it for? Let's move on to that. Why do we have this? Well, sometimes it's just annoying and you need to learn how to control it. Okay, it's an increase with your intuitive abilities. Very few intuitive abilities are discussed in our society today. So we don't have tools to handle them. That's why I created the Academy. We only have doctors who will prescribe you medication and keep you trapped in the cycle. So, what's it for? Well, it's an increase with your abilities, and it's your responsibility to get educated and then learn how to maintain your energy. What else is it for? It's for your own protection, for sure. You have physical cues that are always helping you to understand that the universe or your higher mind, God, is giving you messages, and those messages need to be taken into serious consideration for you to stay safe, but to also meet goals and deadlines and things like this within your life contract. Karmic lessons, that's another reason that it can happen. Okay, so when I'm having a deja vu, I don't tend to go, oh, this is great. Something really cool is going on. This is somebody I should talk to more. This is something I should engage with more. I tend to kind of sit back a little bit and be like, whoa, why is this happening? Okay, there's a lot of synchronicity. Sometimes your deja vus will even go back to when you were a very small child and they get triggered later in life. These are not necessarily just telltale signs that you're syncing up with somebody or a situation and this is going to be a great experience. Sometimes it is a much bigger picture, not warning per se, but definitely about karma and lessons. And I would tread very carefully where you're headed, okay, in those situations. So it could be karmic, could be healing for your own self, healing for your soul, healing from your past lives, stuff that you carried with you into this life. You could find that these ear-ringing episodes are trying to help you to maybe be still and cultivate what's going on the inside in relation to some of these past issues. It could just be from this life, could be from your childhood or whatever, but we typically with even things like that, we're going back even before that. Okay, so we have to kind of look back and be willing to explore. So it's for your own self-healing. What do you do? Okay, what can you do with all of this? Well, you can get control. You can get control of your energy. How can you control it? Empathic awareness training will help you to control it and understand what it's for. You can take psychic medium training, and we teach you the language so that instead of just controlling it and sort of learning how to ignore it and keep it under wraps, we're also learning the bigger picture. Why is it here? How to tap into your psychic ability, how to tap into mediumship, how to tap into your guides, okay, universal wisdom. And not just use it for your own well-being, but also for those around you and then the larger community. All right, so you need to learn the language. You need to develop yourself, as Paul likes to say, develop yourself. Develop yourself, okay, develop yourself. You need to recognize that you are changing and you're potentially evolving. And if you don't, it will cause problems for you physically, mentally, and emotionally. So what alternative do you really have? Because meds won't fix it. Okay, so what else could it look like? Well, if you're not learning how to properly turn it off, how to cleanse it out, how to read the messages and utilize them for yourself and others, if you're not doing any of that, it's going to become headaches. It will become migraines, potentially. You could have stomach issues. Now, some people experience it as acid stomach or esophageal problems, but most people have irritable bowel syndrome, or it would look almost like constipation issues. Okay, just general upset stomach. Depression, it can get as severe as something that would look like bipolar disorder. Again, I can't prescribe diagnose. And I'm not saying that the disorders you maybe have aren't real. I'm just saying that at the root, it's always going to come back down to this. And this is where you can control it on your own. Okay, so depression that comes and goes and you don't really understand what may have triggered it. You would even see this in children that are sensitive or increasing with their intuitive abilities. Okay. Anxiety, especially social anxiety. Even if anxiety doesn't run in your family and you've never had problems with it before, heart palpitations, random anxiety attacks. When a spirit comes in to communicate, the number one side effect that mediums have is an anxiety attack. Okay, so you could be having anxiety attacks based on your now hypersensitivity to energy. Your intuitive abilities increase, so now you're sensitive to objects. You're sensitive to atmospheres. You're sensitive to others, the living, animals, nature, and the deceased. That's a lot. That's going to cause an anxiety disorder. Your sleep patterns will be affected. Your sleep no longer looks the same. What we tend to see is that people stop sleeping between 3 and 5:30 in the morning, which is considered the haunting hour. So that's when there is the most, increased communication from the other side and heightened intuitive abilities in every way. And the energy just is sort of off the charts. So the haunting hour between 3 and 5:30 in the morning. But most people who have a lot of these mediumistic abilities, that would be your left ear ringing all the time. You're really going to possibly, or those who have increased with their empathic abilities up to the 3rd and the 4th levels, you would also see that maybe you don't sleep at night at all anymore. And so you can't fall asleep till like 5:30, 7 a.m., something like that. So a change in sleep pattern can also indicate an increase with your intuitive abilities here in a couple of those areas. And that would look more like night owl syndrome, and less than 20% of the population technically fit into night owl category, which means that they're actually perfectly functioning, only it's at night. Okay, so even if you were normally a day person, that could cease to exist. Obviously, with the sleep patterns, we're also talking about hearing a lot of spirits, having spirits in your face, really wild dreams, a lot of astral travel. Astral travel can lead to sleep paralysis and sleep apnea. Okay, so all of that would fit. Numbness in the face, the mouth, literally your tongue goes numb, your face goes numb, your hands may tingle, your feet may go numb. So numbness. And thinking that quite possibly, along with that can sometimes come the translucent lines, sort of blurring your vision a little bit. A lot of people start to think that they have a blood disorder, or maybe they're diabetic, they have a sugar problem, blood pressure issues. They go and they get checked out and the doctors can't find anything, and they think that they're sick, and they're not. It's this, okay? So these are all different layers, different forms, different levels within the ear ringing phenomenon, okay, that we've been talking about here for forever. Since I was a kid, this was just something that we just knew to pay attention to within my family anyways. And people understanding that this is really an alert system. It's a phone call. It's you being the receiver on the other end of a messaging system. This is really where you want to start. And if you're noticing that a few of the other things that I mentioned are also happening with you, it's really overdue time that you come in for the training. Okay. All right. So that's what it is, folks. Ta-da! That's why your ears are ringing. And yes, again, it is in large at the moment due to the pandemic, which isn't going anywhere. I would say for the next 2.5 years or so, we're really going to be looking at consistent increases with this. And so intuitive information, intuitive intelligence is, you cannot reverse it. Okay, so non-reversible, this is only going in one direction, and that is on increase. So you have to manage it as it increases. You can't just put a Band-Aid over something like this. Okay, Do we have questions or comments?
Yeah, we have some comments. A lot of thank yous.
Oh, great.
Which is very good.
You're welcome.
People definitely interested in, one, the mini classes, but two, the classes we offer at the Academy. So we have the link up. And
oh, good. Yeah, make sure you put up for them the Empathic Awareness training and Psychic Mediumship.
And Kim Petku says she established office hours for the spirits.
Very good.
But then I had a question just to throw in here.
Okay.
So you mentioned tuning out or blocking certain spirit energy when you're off duty, so to speak. So you're tuning out the left ear. Can you tune out your right ear, your higher mind, or would that just be dangerous to do?
I think it's dangerous to do. I think tuning out any of it is dangerous to do. I think that there's a time and a place, and I think that we all need to learn discernment, and we all need to learn the language. This is part of our roots. You know, this has been wiped out, you know, for purposes of power, you know, through the church and whatnot, where God, the concept of communicating directly with spirit, was removed from us. These are the old native ways. This is our roots, and we should have never ever detached from our roots. And, you know, if you don't find that the more native system is something that you identify with, I will also say this: in the Old Testament, in the books of Solomon, there were trainings for mediums and prophets. That's what this is. You know, this is prophecy. And once that was removed, we were allowed to be placed in the New Testament with rapists and murderers and thieves and devil worshippers. And that's just a disgusting, sad loss, you know. So I feel like everything I've been shown by spirit is to replace those trainings, native and otherwise. And I think that it's very unsafe to tune it out. But I think that it's unsafe to allow it to just run rampant all the time too. I think we need to find a happy medium. I think we all need to be a happy medium, right? I think we all need to learn that we are in control of our bodies. We're in control of the messaging system, but it isn't going to necessarily bend to us at all times. We are in control of how we react to it. And what we need to learn how to do is to say, this is of use, and I'm going to utilize it now or later, but I will be looking at this, and this is not of use, and it needs to be discarded, or I need to turn off to it. Because there are, just like if you deal with other people all the time, you notice there are very menacing forces out there, you know, and we can't just let that in all the time. But no, it would not be safe to turn off, especially the right ear.
I don't, I swear.
I would not. I'm not going anywhere with you if you do. We know better.
Yes. Jill Haney is saying that both of her ears ring most of the time. Mm-hmm. It's been that way for a few years, ever since she took a Reiki class. Migraines too. Well, where's the best place to start? And she also added that the ear ringing is overwhelming at times, and it almost gets painful. It
can be painful. It's horrible sometimes. It's shocking. It's shocking how you could just be sitting and everything's completely normal, and it's almost like a knife. Woo, you know, and it really depends on the spirit and all of that. So what you're talking about is that it was activated when you took a Reiki training, a Reiki certification, and that would have been due to probably your attunement, okay, but like a Kundalini process and all of this. And what you're going to want to do is the psychic mediumship training. That is the next level. Everybody ends up here eventually, because if you don't really understand the language that's being spoken, even your healing is going to be limited to some degree. So you need to learn what else you're supposed to be doing with your healing abilities. It goes way beyond Reiki. Absolutely.
Yeah. Kim Petku put in that, yes, thank you so very much. Your classes make sense of everything and have helped me put things together.
Very good.
And
you're welcome.
And I would agree.
Okay. Have a great night. Thanks.